There are moments in life when a person loses so much that even getting out of bed feels impossible. Moments when the people they trusted the most become the very people who destroy them. Moments when humiliation cuts so deeply that the pain never completely leaves. For Emma Carter, that moment came on a rainy Thursday afternoon when she walked into a boardroom she had helped build and walked out with nothing. No company, no marriage, no reputation, no future that she could see. The people sitting around that table believed they had erased her from their story forever. They laughed. They celebrated. They watched security escort her from the building carrying a small cardboard box containing the last pieces of a life she thought she would have forever. What none of them realized was that they were witnessing the beginning of something much bigger than a downfall. They were witnessing the first chapter of a comeback that would one day leave every single one of them speechless. 5 years later, a black luxury car pulled up outside that same building. The company had changed. The city had changed. The people inside had changed. But one thing remained exactly the same: the memory of the woman they had thrown away. As the car door opened, conversations stopped. Executives froze. Employees stared through the glass windows. Some couldn't believe what they were seeing. Others wished they were mistaken, because stepping onto the sidewalk was the very woman they had humiliated in front of everyone. Emma Carter was back. Only this time, she wasn't carrying a cardboard box. She wasn't asking for a second chance. She wasn't looking for forgiveness. She had returned as one of the wealthiest CEOs in America, and before the day was over, the people who had betrayed her would learn a lesson they would never forget. Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand how Emma Carter returned as a billionaire, we first need to understand how completely her life fell apart. Because stories like this don't begin with wealth. They don't begin with private jets, luxury offices, or billion-dollar companies. They begin with trust. They begin with love. And sometimes, they begin with betrayal hiding in plain sight. Years before her dramatic return, Emma Carter was living what many people would have called the American dream. She had built a successful company alongside her husband, David Carter. Together they were admired by employees, respected by investors, and envied by competitors. Their stories seemed like the kind of success people read about in business magazines. Two ambitious people starting with almost nothing and building something extraordinary through hard work and determination. But every success story has details that outsiders never see. Every smiling photograph hides private conversations. Every celebration hides worries. Every achievement creates new pressures. As Emma and David's company expanded, so did the demands placed upon them. Long hours became normal. Family dinners became rare. Vacations became business trips. Yet through it all, Emma remained committed to the company and to the man she believed would always stand beside her. What she didn't know was that another person was slowly becoming more influential in both their business and their lives. Her name was Vanessa Blake. Intelligent, ambitious, charismatic, and trusted by everyone around her, Vanessa quickly rose through the company ranks. Employees admired her confidence. Investors appreciated her professionalism. Emma considered her one of her closest friends. It never crossed her mind that Vanessa would one day play a central role in the destruction of everything she had built. The warning signs appeared gradually. They always do. Small changes that seem insignificant when viewed individually but become impossible to ignore when viewed together. David started working later than usual. Important meetings happened without Emma's knowledge. Financial decisions began appearing that she didn't remember approving. Questions that once received direct answers were met with vague explanations. At first, Emma dismissed her concerns. Successful companies experience growing pains. Busy executives face pressure. Relationships go through difficult periods. That was the explanation she gave herself repeatedly. It was easier to believe that than to consider the possibility that the people closest to her were hiding something that could change her life forever. Yet the truth has a way of revealing itself, even when people desperately try to keep it hidden. And in Emma's case, the first crack in the illusion appeared on a night that seemed completely ordinary. A single discovery would force her to question everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her business, and the people she trusted most. Emma Carter had not always been the woman people whispered about in boardrooms or featured on magazine covers. Long before anyone associated her name with billion-dollar deals, she was simply a young woman from a middle-class family in Ohio who believed hard work could overcome almost anything. She was the type of person who arrived early, stayed late, and never expected special treatment. Friends often described her as determined, but what truly separated Emma from most people was her ability to keep moving forward when circumstances suggested she should quit. That trait would eventually save her life, although she had no idea of that yet. When Emma met David Carter, she believed she had found someone who shared her values. David was ambitious, charming, and capable of making anyone feel like the most important person in the room. He possessed the kind of confidence that attracted opportunities. Together, they seemed unstoppable. While many couples spent their evenings watching television or going out with friends, Emma and David spent theirs building business plans, researching markets, and discussing ideas that most people considered unrealistic. They dreamed about creating something significant. They dreamed about proving their critics wrong. Most importantly, they dreamed together. The early years were difficult. Their first office was barely larger than a storage room. The furniture came from secondhand stores. Some months they worried about making payroll. There were nights when they slept in the office because they could not afford both rent and business expenses. Yet those struggles created a bond that seemed impossible to break. Every obstacle they overcame became another piece of their shared story. Every success felt meaningful because they had earned it through sacrifice. Employees admired them. Investors respected them. Their company gradually transformed from a small startup into a rapidly growing enterprise. As the company expanded, Emma became known as the strategic mind behind many of its biggest decisions. She understood people. She recognized opportunities before competitors noticed them. She developed relationships with clients that generated millions in revenue. David, meanwhile, became the public face of the business. He appeared in interviews. He delivered speeches. He represented the company at industry events. The arrangement worked well. At least it appeared to. Success changes people in ways that are not always obvious. Money creates options. Influence attracts attention. Power introduces temptations that never existed during periods of struggle. The qualities that help individuals build something often differ from the qualities required to protect it. Over time, subtle shifts began occurring within the company and within David himself. Employees noticed he enjoyed the spotlight more than before. Investors increasingly directed their attention toward him. Magazine profiles frequently portrayed him as the primary architect of the company's success. Emma rarely complained. She believed their accomplishments belonged to both of them regardless of who received public recognition. That trust would eventually cost her everything. Vanessa Blake entered their lives during one of the company's most successful years. She arrived with an impressive resume, exceptional communication skills, and an ability to make people feel comfortable almost immediately. Within months, she had become one of the organization's most valued executives. She excelled at managing relationships. She knew exactly what to say during difficult conversations. Clients loved her. Employees respected her. Even Emma found herself appreciating Vanessa's intelligence and work ethic. Soon Vanessa was attending executive meetings. Then she was joining private strategy sessions. Before long, she became a regular presence in both the professional and personal lives of the Carters. Holiday dinners, corporate retreats, charity events. Vanessa seemed to be everywhere. Looking back years later, Emma would remember countless moments that should have raised concerns. Conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Unexplained meetings. Strange glances. Small inconsistencies in stories. At the time, however, she dismissed them. Trust has a remarkable ability to blind people to uncomfortable truths. Months turned into years. Revenue continued growing. The company reached milestones that once seemed impossible. Yet beneath the surface, relationships were shifting. David became increasingly distant. He traveled more frequently. He spent less time discussing important decisions with Emma. When she asked questions, he assured her everything was fine. Stress, pressure, growth challenges. Those explanations sounded reasonable. After all, successful businesses required sacrifices. Emma convinced herself she was imagining problems that did not exist. Then one evening she noticed something she could not easily explain away. David had left his phone on the kitchen counter while taking a call in another room. Emma had no habit of checking his messages. In fact, she considered such behavior a violation of trust. But when a notification appeared on the screen, She happened to glance down. What she saw lasted only a few seconds. A name, a message, a sentence that instantly made her heart race. The sender was Vanessa. The message was brief. I can't wait until she finally knows. Emma stared at the screen. Her mind immediately searched for innocent explanations. Maybe it referred to a surprise. Maybe it involved a business announcement. Maybe there was a context she did not understand. People often jump to conclusions when emotions take control. Emma reminded herself of that repeatedly. Yet something about the message stayed with her. Over the following weeks, she paid closer attention. She noticed David protecting his phone more carefully. She noticed Vanessa avoiding eye contact during certain conversations. She noticed financial reports containing details she did not remember approving. Most concerning of all, she discovered several meetings involving board members that had occurred without her participation. That had never happened before. For the first time in years, Emma felt genuinely uneasy. The feeling intensified when she reviewed internal documents and found subtle changes in company ownership structures. Nothing appeared illegal. Nothing appeared alarming when viewed individually. Yet taken together, the changes suggested someone was consolidating power. Someone was positioning themselves for greater control. Emma began quietly gathering information. She reviewed records. She examined financial statements. She studied board communications. What she found left her stunned. Certain executives had been meeting privately with David and Vanessa for months. Decisions affecting company governance had been discussed without her knowledge. Several individuals who once reported directly to her had shifted their loyalties elsewhere. The realization struck with devastating force. This was not a misunderstanding. This was preparation. Someone was building a plan, and somehow she had become the target. The discovery raised countless questions. Why would David exclude her? Why would Vanessa participate? What exactly were they trying to accomplish? Most importantly, how long had this been happening? Emma desperately wanted answers. Unfortunately, the truth waiting ahead would prove far worse than anything she imagined. Because while she was searching for evidence of professional betrayal, she had not yet uncovered the personal betrayal that made everything else possible. And when that truth finally emerged, it would destroy the life she thought she knew forever. The answer Emma feared most arrived on a quiet evening that began like any other. She had spent weeks reviewing records, checking reports, and searching for an explanation that would make sense of everything she had been discovering. Part of her still hoped she was wrong. Part of her still believed there had to be a reasonable explanation for the strange behavior, the private meetings, and the growing distance between herself and David. But hope has a way of disappearing when confronted with undeniable truth. That evening, while reviewing expense reports connected to executive travel, Emma found a series of hotel bookings that matched dates David had claimed to be attending conferences alone. At first, it seemed insignificant. Then she found another, and another. The pattern became impossible to ignore. The same locations, the same dates, the same private reservations. When she cross-referenced those dates with company travel records, one name appeared again and again. Vanessa Blake. For several minutes, Emma simply sat in silence. She stared at the documents spread across her desk and felt the world around her grow strangely quiet. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was real. The husband she had trusted for years had been living a double life, and the woman she considered one of her closest friends had been helping him hide it. Yet as painful as the discovery was, something else disturbed her even more. The affair alone could not explain the boardroom meetings, the ownership changes, and the growing effort to isolate her from company decisions. There was another layer to this story, a layer connected to money, power, and control. Emma continued investigating. What she uncovered over the following days shattered whatever remained of her confidence in the people around her. Emails revealed coordinated conversations between David, Vanessa, and several board members. Legal documents showed preparations for major leadership changes. Financial agreements demonstrated that certain executives had been promised promotions and incentives if they supported a restructuring plan. The realization hit with devastating force. They were not merely betraying her personally. They were preparing to remove her professionally. Every step had been planned. Every conversation had served a purpose. Every smile had hidden an agenda. Before Emma could decide how to respond, the attack began. The invitation arrived without warning. An emergency board meeting scheduled for Friday morning. No explanation, no agenda, no indication of what would be discussed. Emma entered the conference room expecting tension. She did not expect an ambush. Around the table sat board members, executives, legal advisors, and investors. David sat at the head of the table. Vanessa sat beside him. Neither looked surprised to see her. In fact, they looked prepared. The meeting started with formalities. Then accusations followed. Questions were raised about leadership decisions. Concerns were raised about company performance. Claims were made regarding strategic disagreements. One after another, people Emma had worked alongside for years began presenting arguments against her. The details varied, but the objective was obvious. They were building a case for her removal. Emma responded calmly at first. She challenged inaccuracies. She presented facts. She defended her record. But the outcome had already been decided. The votes had been secured before she entered the room. When the final decision was announced, Emma felt as though she were watching someone else's life unfold. Her executive authority was revoked. Her position was terminated. Her influence within the company disappeared with a single vote. Then came the moment she would never forget. Security was called, not because she posed a threat, not because she had done anything wrong, but because David wanted everyone present to witness her humiliation. As she gathered her belongings and walked toward the exit, she glanced around the room. Some people looked away. Others stared at the table. A few appeared uncomfortable. None intervened. Years of loyalty had been erased in less than an hour. Outside the building, rain fell steadily as Emma stood holding a cardboard box containing the last remnants of the career she had helped create. Behind her, executives returned to business as usual. Inside, David and Vanessa believed they had won. The months that followed became the darkest period of Emma's life. The company released carefully crafted statements portraying her departure as necessary for future growth. Industry publications repeated the narrative. Former colleagues distanced themselves. Invitations stopped arriving. Calls went unanswered. Friends disappeared. Even some family members encouraged her to move on rather than fight. The divorce arrived shortly afterward. David moved forward publicly with Vanessa. Photos appeared online. Interviews followed. Magazine articles celebrated their success. Meanwhile, Emma watched everything she had built continue without her. She sold assets to cover expenses. She moved into a small apartment. She spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything had collapsed so completely. The humiliation lingered. The betrayal lingered. The loneliness lingered. For a period of time, Emma disappeared from public view. People assumed her story was over. They were wrong. What separated Emma from many people was not intelligence, talent, or luck. It was resilience. At her lowest point, she made a decision that would change everything. Instead of focusing on what had been taken from her, she focused on what remained. Her knowledge, her experience, her determination. She began studying industries most investors ignored: emerging technologies, advanced logistics, artificial intelligence, sustainable infrastructure. She spent countless hours reading reports, attending conferences anonymously, and learning from experts. Years earlier, she had helped build one successful company. Now she intended to build another. The process was anything but easy. Investors rejected her. Banks declined funding. Potential partners questioned her credibility. Many still associated her with the public narrative created by David and Vanessa. Yet Emma refused to quit. Every rejection became motivation. Every setback became fuel. Gradually, she assembled a small team of people who believed in her vision. Together, they launched a company focused on solving major supply chain inefficiencies using advanced technology. At first, growth was slow. Then a breakthrough occurred. A major contract generated attention. Additional clients followed. Revenue increased dramatically. Investors who once ignored her suddenly wanted meetings. Within a few years, the company expanded across multiple markets. Within a few more years, it became one of the fastest-growing businesses in the country. Then came the milestone nobody had imagined. Emma Carter became a billionaire. The same woman who had once carried a cardboard box into the rain now controlled an empire worth billions of dollars. Yet despite her success, she never forgot the company that had destroyed her. She watched from a distance as David and Vanessa continued running the organization they had taken from her. Publicly, they appeared successful. Privately, the situation was very different. Poor decisions accumulated. Debt increased. Strategic mistakes multiplied. Revenue growth slowed. The company remained valuable, but cracks were beginning to form. Emma noticed something else. Its stock price had become vulnerable. Quietly, carefully, and through a series of investment entities, she began purchasing shares. Month after month, the acquisitions continued. Nobody paid attention. Nobody connected the purchases to Emma. David remained focused on maintaining appearances. Vanessa remained focused on influence and status. Neither realized what was happening. By the time they finally noticed unusual activity among shareholders, it was already too late. The annual shareholder meeting arrived on a clear autumn morning. Executives filled the room. Investors took their seats. David prepared to deliver another confident presentation. Then the doors opened. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. A familiar figure entered the room. Emma Carter. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Some employees looked stunned. Others looked confused. David's expression changed instantly. Because in that moment he understood. Emma was not there as a guest. She was there as an owner. The announcements that followed sent shockwaves throughout the room. Emma's investment group had acquired a controlling interest. She possessed enough voting power to reshape leadership decisions. Years after being thrown out of the company she had helped build, she had returned with more authority than anyone in the room. David attempted to regain control of the meeting. It didn't work. Evidence emerged revealing years of poor governance, hidden liabilities, and questionable financial practices. Independent audits confirmed serious concerns. Investigations followed. Board members who had once supported David scrambled to protect themselves. Vanessa's influence vanished almost overnight. The empire they had spent years protecting began collapsing around them. Many expected Emma to seek revenge. Many expected public humiliation. Many expected anger. Instead, Emma focused on saving the company. She removed individuals responsible for misconduct. She restructured operations. She stabilized finances. She protected employees whose livelihoods depended on the business. In doing so, she achieved something far more meaningful than revenge. She proved she had always been the better leader. Months later, David and Vanessa found themselves facing consequences they never anticipated. Their reputations suffered. Their influence disappeared. The admiration they once enjoyed faded rapidly. People who had supported them moved on. Opportunities vanished. Emma, meanwhile, continued building. Not because she needed validation. Not because she needed revenge. But because she had finally understood a lesson many people spend their entire lives learning. The greatest victory is not destroying those who hurt you. The greatest victory is becoming so successful that their betrayal no longer defines your story. Years after that rainy afternoon, when security escorted her from the building, Emma stood once again inside the headquarters she had helped create. The difference was that she no longer needed anyone's approval. She no longer needed anyone's permission. The people who once laughed at her had become a chapter in her journey rather than the ending of it. And perhaps that is why stories like Emma's continue to resonate with so many people. Because almost everyone has experienced betrayal in some form. Almost everyone has been underestimated, dismissed, or written off by someone who believed they knew their limits. Emma's story reminds us that setbacks are not always endings. Sometimes they are beginnings disguised as losses. The people who humiliated her believed they were closing the final chapter. Instead, they were turning the page. And when Emma Carter returned, she did not come back to reclaim what had been taken from her. She returned to show the world what was possible when someone refuses to stay defeated.